Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Sit back, relax. It's time to travel with Cosmic Passport. Spaced Out Weekend presents Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport, a 1-hour warm-up of news, stories, thoughts, and ideas to captivate your mind. You can follow us at spacedoutradio.com.
Now 20 years have passed us by, and we look back and count the time. Burning like the summer sun, when the world was young. As I lay staring from the ground, and stepping trumpets ring to sound.
And now, here's Our Lady of Flight, Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Sit back, relax. It's time to travel with Cosmic Passport. Spaced Out Weekend presents Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport. A 1-hour warm-up of news, stories, thoughts, and ideas to captivate your mind. You can follow us at spacedoutradio.com.
Now 20 years have passed us by, and we look back and count the time. Burning like the summer sun, when the world was young. As I lay staring from the ground, and stepping trumpets ring to sound.
And now, here's Our Lady of Flight, Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Hello. Okay, microphone Real Tech. I get levels on that. That's probably what I need to do. Okay. I don't know. Do you get anything now? Okay. Thanks. Okay, we'll do. Bye.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Scout 6316, 8.8 for 6,000.
Scout 6316, North Approach, going to maintain 3,000, number 1 for the right.
3,000, Scout 6316.
Redwood 811, going to maintain 4,000. Airport's open to box 1.
Take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again. Take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again.
6 Roman Carefly, runway heading, runway 5. Let's take off.
Check.
And we are ready for takeoff. Sit back, relax. It's time to travel with Cosmic Passport. Spaced Out Weekend presents Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport, a 1-hour warm-up of news, stories, thoughts, and ideas to captivate your mind. You can follow us at spacedoutradio.com.
Now 20 years have passed us by, and we look back and count the time. Burning like the summer sun, when the world was young. Silently staring from the ground, and 7 trumpets wait to sound.
And now, here's Our Lady of Flight, Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spaced Out Radio Weekend. Yes, this is Elizabeth, finally joining you after technical difficulties that were so simple. Even I am turning beet red at the fact that I just didn't have the right microphone settings. I'm so sorry, folks. But this is Elizabeth Anglin, your host before the host on Spaced Out Radio Weekend, so it's all good, because what's not to like about Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Weekend? We have a great show for you tonight. We have a Hannah Nordhaus, who is an award-winning author, just won a Willa Award, which is a Woman Writing the West Award, for her book, American Ghost. Is interviewed by James Tyson, who is sadly on break, so I don't get to give him any crap, especially since I had technical difficulties running the board. You know, and I love to give him crap. It's like we're married. It's just like, hey, who can I hurl crap at who's not a husband? Oh, James. Well, he's away, so he's missing all the crap hurling. But he did do a great job interviewing Hannah Nordhaus, who will be up at the top of the hour. And she wrote a book, American Ghost, about, I believe it's her great-grandmother, who was a ghost in a hotel in Santa Fe for a very, very, very long time. Very famous. And she did all the research on her family ghost and wrote an amazing book, American Ghost. And she's local. I mean, she's in the West. And the ghost is in Santa Fe, which is 25 minutes up the road. This is my neck of the woods. Speaking of our neck of the woods on Spaced Out Radio, You could be listening on spacedoutradio.com on Spreaker right now. You could be listening on revolutionradio.com, and you could be on the chat on Freedom Slips. You could be on Spaced Out Radio, SOR Space Travelers, listening on chat. And now actually listening, because I got this show going. I'm so proud of myself, but I'm still so embarrassed. But that's our neighborhood, those 3 places. Oh, we have one more place. I'm a little daft. I can't remember it. Something tunes. These are all the places you can listen to us and listen to our great cast of paranormal researchers, Bigfoot researchers, alien abductees and contactees, and more. So if you are interested in all of these things and you love our show, please consider becoming a Spaced Out Radio space traveler. It is $5 a month, and you get a newsletter, which is coming up soon. I'm editing it. I will do a much better job editing than the first time running the speaker board. I promise. I really do. And we also have swag. We have books. We give giveaways. We have all the archives and more if you become a Spaced Out Radio space traveler for just $5 a month. It's a bargain. We go 7 days a week with the best in paranormal research, ufological research, Bigfoot research, and all the other great stuff. Because it's our neighborhood. And, you know, we're neighbors. Speaking of neighborhoods, I want to get back to Madrid, New Mexico, which is 25 minutes down the road from Santa Fe, which the subject of our American Ghost is the town of our American Ghost this evening. We had a very, very wild, ghostly full moon. I'm not going to tell who, but a pillar of our community had an issue in that she fell asleep and she left her door open on the full moon. And she was awakened by somebody who appeared to be her friend Jason. I'm using a different name. Jason came into her house and said, "Hey, Carly, you left your door open. That's not a smart thing to do." And then he said, "Come on, I want to go show you my truck." And he started to walk away from the house. And as he started to walk away from the house, she realized that that wasn't Jason. That had to be somebody else, because that wasn't his truck. And something was very, very, very odd. The next moment, she found herself confronted by a woman in her house, and the sound of a truck making a large, truck loader noise. And the woman said, "Don't worry about the truck. It will be okay." She realized, after the woman disappeared, that both her friend Jason and the woman and the truck were gone, that they were not her friend, they were not a woman, they were not a truck. It was some sort of ghostly visitation, and that she had left her door open, which is not a smart thing in any community. You don't want to leave your door open at night when you're sleeping, especially if you're a single woman. So we had a full moon ghostly visitation in our ghost town of Madrid, New Mexico. So that's what's happening in my neighborhood. It goes around. People tell stories, people see things. Listen to your neighbors. You might hear something really good about what's happening where you are. Moving on to some less ghostly stories, and I mean really less ghostly. And who would have thunk that these people would have done this? So if you guys don't know me, I know there are a lot of new listeners from Revolution Radio and our other new affiliates. My background is that I was a person in denial for a long, long time. And I was a paranormal denialist. How about that? It means, yes, you have paranormal experiences, but those can't be true. So you just say, no, nothing here, nothing to see. I see nothing. I hear nothing. And then when I was 23 years old, I had aliens show up in my apartment, make me paralyzed and play with my cat. And while I was paralyzed, I heard a lot of really bad words in their direction that, that you can't say on Spreaker or they'll make your show go away, like really loudly in my mind. I said all these really bad words that start with F. And I got up a lot of adrenaline, and the aliens went, but I had this conscious memory of being disempowered by aliens, not able to move, a bunch of aliens playing with my cat. I mean, playing with my cat. Like, really having a good time playing with my cat. And we won't use the other word, you bad people on SOR Space Travelers. Bad people over there, Joe Allgeier, with your chicka chicka bow bow. Anyway, I had to stop being in denial. And it was hard for me to stop being in denial. I was really freaked out. I was really afraid. And it just so happened that at the time I was in Salem, Massachusetts, and I was close enough. I called Bud Hopkins, and I was put in touch with John Mack, who wanted to start researching alien abductions. So that's where I started, at the beginning of John Mack's alien abduction research. And that's academia. That's science. You may not want it to be science, but it was science. If you're a skeptic, you don't want it to be science, and you'll say it's not, but it is. So after I worked with John Mack, or actually during, I also worked at MIT, and I worked on the Phobos experiment, which was, I'm not a physicist. I was their secretary. It was a very large international collaboration, slamming gold ions into gold ions at Brookhaven National Lab. Oh my God, I was one of those evil people, as now all the conspiracy theorists are saying. I can tell you that working with Henry Kendall, who started Union of Concerned Scientists, who is all about making the world a healthier place. He's now dead, but he's still about making the world a healthier place. And his organization, Union of Concerned Scientists, was, stopping cigarette companies from having cigarettes everywhere, removing landmines, doing all sorts of wonderful things, humanistic things for the world. He was also part of the Phobos experiment, and he was a good friend of mine. And is now, in spirit, still a good friend of mine, for those of you who believe in that. Because now I'm a spirit medium. Anyway, people hate CERN. And half of the guys working at CERN were the guys that I worked with at MIT, or not half, maybe 3/4, or maybe less than that. But they're all, physicists. And there's something about physicists that paranormal people need to understand. Physicists, especially physicists who are working on discovering the final parts of the unified field theory, they go out and they do work and they run numbers and they develop experiments with very little hope of ever being successful. They have very little hope of finding. I think it took like over 20 years to find the proof of the Higgs boson, which was considered the last missing link in the unified field theory. And it just happened in the last couple of years that Higgs was discovered, or they think it was discovered. They have to do more research. But there are tons of physicists out there who are just like paranormal researchers. They are working on a wing and a prayer to find these little tiny particles and these little tiny bits of matter that would point to a unified field theory. And what's interesting to me is that they're simply interested in truth. What is the truth of the universe? How do things work? Well, paranormal researchers, alien abduction researchers, Bigfoot researchers, we're also looking for truth. And a lot of times we don't find it, or we find little smidges. We find the braid in our horse's hair if we're a Bigfoot experiencer, or we find a mark on our body that is, rectilinear. That sounds bad, but if you're an abductee, you'll see the marks on your body, or you'll feel when you have something implanted in a joint. If you're a contactee, someone may see the lights or see you talking with somebody that they can't see. It's hard to actually get proof. It's harder for paranormal researchers because things are so fleeting and they're usually not reproducible. We get lucky with ghosts who stay in one place because sometimes they do the same things and say the same things, and if you have a medium, they present in the same way. But otherwise, we're not able to really make reproducible experiments like you would in academia, and like the folks at CERN do, and like the physicist who worked on Phobos, which was to discover what happened at the Big Bang by slamming gold ions into gold ions. They weren't trying to bring about the end of the world. They're just trying to understand the world and the universe, and so are we. So, I think from the religious standpoint, a lot of people who are highly religious would think, oh, those paranormal researchers, watch out, they're talking to demons. And then, the people who are afraid of, let's say, the educated elite, or academics, or physicists, or physics, will say, oh, those CERN people, those guys, they're really trying to bring about the end of the world. So apparently what happened is, I think they got tired of listening to all this stuff about them being evil, and they staged a human sacrifice at CERN involving cloaked men stabbing a woman, which is terrible. I mean, it's terrible. So this is from Ghost Zone, because I can't get the anomalist up tonight to find other things. But this is what they were doing, and I'm reading directly from Ghost Zone, so thank you. A truly incredible story has emerged from Geneva as scientists at CERN were caught on tape performing a mock human sacrifice. The bizarre footage posted to YouTube shows a group of cloaked individuals gathering around a statue of the Hindu god Shiva and stabbing a woman to death. I don't think we need to get into the fact that this sort of makes me think that physicists hate women, because you know what? There are so few woman physicists. It's like the place where you won't find any women is in physics. But never mind that. That's just my aside. Let's go back to the story. Little is known about the origins of the video, but there is no doubt as to its authenticity thanks to a jaw-dropping response from CERN. In a statement to the AFP, a spokesperson for the organization confirmed that the scene was filmed at their facility in Geneva, which is home to the Large Hadron Collider. CERN stressed that the faux sacrifice was performed without the group's foreknowledge or permission, and promised an investigation into the strange affair. Ultimately, the organization dismissed the incident as a prank and attributed it to visiting scientists making creative use of their downtime. And then they said, in quotes, CERN welcomes every year thousands of scientific users from all over the world, and sometimes some of them let their humor go too far, an email from the AFP said. Quote, this is what happened on this occasion. I can imagine it can be pretty frustrating, this is my aside, to some of those physicists. They were some of the nicest guys I ever worked with. Now, there was maybe one female physicist, and our tech person was female, and then there was me. But so we won't say anything about that. Maybe they've noticed that there aren't enough women in physics. But not saying anything about there aren't enough women in physics, guys. But they're really nice people. And so for you who want to keep hating CERN and thinking they're trying to bring about the end of the world, really, you know what? They're kind of shy. They're a little bit nerdy. Yes, they're socially impaired. Most of them only speak physics, so like if they talk to you, they'd be talking you into like the pi mu something, and I'm looking for Higgs and stuff that you don't understand. If you're patient, after about half an hour of them only talking physics, they might actually talk English, and then you would find out that they have like wives and babies and go to church, or are humanist, atheist, or are Hindu, or are poets. A lot of them are musicians, and they're pretty good guys. So I think there's a lot of frustration when we pick on CERN folk and physicists in general, because they have a very frustrating job. They often don't find what they're looking for. It's a big risk. They may not get tenure at their academic institutions, and none of them really mean to be mean or do anything bad. So this is what else they say about this footage from CERN. The footage is eerily reminiscent of the notorious tales of Bohemian Grove, and the occult legend has a history of science and magic mixing together, including the infinite rituals of revered rocket engineer Jack Parsons. I've never heard of Jack Parsons. The suspicious source of the video, however, suggests that perhaps those memories are exactly what the scene was designed to evoke, and that there is a secondary hoax of sorts at work here, and that this was not really a found footage scenario. So apparently somebody wanted to redo rocket engineer Jack Parsons' twisted whatever the heck it was. Imaginative observers may have also considered the idea that the ritual, although a mock sacrifice, actually was performed with a desire to stir something in the ether at the cutting edge scientific facility. I don't think they wanted to do that. These guys totally are just really frustrated that they can't get their detectors to work right, and that they can't get chips to work right, and they get faulty parts and things get wet, and I don't think they wanted. I think they were blowing off steam. We may never know exactly what was happening in the courtyard that evening, but it is certain that the footage and the admission from CERN that it was real ensures the weird events will forever have a place in the conspiracy lore. Yeah, okay, fine. If you want to go out and find more about it, you can go to Coast to Coast AM, which is, I suppose I'm bad for, reading their stuff, but thank you. I'm giving you credit. You guys can go over there and read about it and see the film. Let's see what else happened. There was a lot of stuff that happened this week. We had a Loch Ness Monster sighting. I don't see it. I'm looking at the apparent video, and it looks just like, it could be a stick in the water with a ripple around it. So, but apparently there was a blue thing, or a couple of blue things in the water. Here is what was said on Coast to Coast AM. A Scottish woman on vacation at Loch Ness was fortunate enough to have a tourist experience that thousands of visitors to the site every year hope for when she seemingly spotted Nessie. Kaylee Telleth took a holiday to the famed paranormal landmark with her family, and during a leisurely lunch she noticed something very strange in the water. Thankfully, Telleth managed to photograph the anomalous blue thing she saw swimming in the water. I wasn't scared, but my eyes popped out of my face, she told the Herald Scotsman. James will kill me for that accent. It looks so much like the Loch Ness Monster. While skeptics will surely dismiss the image as something more prosaic than the infamous cryptids said to lurk in Loch Ness, it's a vacation memory that Telleth will not soon forget. I can't stop thinking about it, she added. It's not often you see a monster while on holiday. We'll let you come up with your own mother-in-law joke to finish that thought. Arg, arg, arg. So, it'd be cool. Scotland is the land of Outlander. And, when I think about Outlander, those of you who know me, it's like, time travel, portals, yay, let's go. Okay, other stuff that's happening. I'm wondering how many of you, I can't really look and read chat and read this at the same time, but how many of you think that the Loch Ness Monster pictures are just somebody's swimming arm? Like if you're bringing your arm over your head and you photograph it at a certain angle and then you blow it up, it looks like the neck of a monster, and it's just your hand when you're doing the front crawl. I'm just saying, I'm not skeptical, but I'm skeptical. So vortexes, getting on with vortexes. Question, is there a paranormal vortex in your hometown? I have a vortex of cats that like to cry for food, and it seems like whenever I've got one cat that comes in the vortex, I put it back out, and then another cat comes in, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing, the cat cries for food. So if you hear one of these cats, it's because there actually is a paranormal vortex in my house that creates a place for cats to come and get wet food. Somehow they talk to each other telepathically, and then they direct each other to other vortexes that can come here, because I'm such a pushover that if you cry at all, I give you wet food. And, if you're a human and you have a taste for cat wet food, I suppose you could find a vortex and end up at my house, But that would just be, I would just look at you like, man, that's really sad. It's not pate, even though it says it's pate. But I would still feed you wet food if you wanted it. So if you hear a cat, that's what it is. It's the paranormal cat wet food vortex that directly dumps cats into my house to cry for wet food at all times of the day and night. And if you think I sound a little stressed, it's because I don't sleep, because of all these cats coming in and asking for wet food. But anyway, paranormal investigator Joshua P. Warren explained why Asheville, North Carolina is a paranormal vortex and how you can find vortexes in your own home. Vortexes are similar to portals, time travel, yay, which are places where an imbalance between the physical and non-physical worlds allow information and beings to travel back and forth, beings like cats who want wet food. A vortex is a larger portal where energy flows in and out of the earth and where we come into contact with strange phenomena more often. The part of the United States between the 35th and 37th parallels, hey, I'm in it, is a known area for paranormal activity, likely related to vortexes, and includes Area 51, Joplin Spooklight, and Dulce, New Mexico. Right up the street, over there. Yeah. Maybe they're sending me the cats. So, let's see what the actual article said. Again, on Coast to Coast. North Carolina, which is Asheville, falls within the vortex-filled boundary as well and has a rich history of weird goings-on. From the lost colony of Roanoke to the strangeness of Asheville to the devil's tramping ground, where nothing will grow in the soil. Warren suggested it may be possible for a person to physically slip through a vortex and emerge in a version of reality similar to our own but slightly different. Apparently, the cats, maybe they're coming from a different version of reality and they just like wet food there too. Though more likely the vortex would induce a mental experience. It's possible that someone listening to this program right now has a portal in the basement of his or her house. Hopefully it's not feeding cats into your house to ask you for wet food. According to Warren, one can test for vortexes by using a straight piece of wire capped with an aluminum foil bail. Hold the wire, place the ball between eyes, and walk the property. If you enter a vortex, you'll have some kind of mental experience, he noted. You know, I have mental experiences all the time. I wonder if they're just vortexes everywhere, because I'd hate to, like, walk around and not have a mental experience. I mean, wouldn't that equal being brain dead or something? Maybe not. Warren shared details about North Carolina's Brown Mountain Lights, where anomalous ghost lights have been seen for decades. He commented on recent news about skeptic Dr. Daniel Caton of Appalachian State University, whose research team recently captured undeniable video evidence of the light phenomena. Warren thinks the lights are a byproduct of a vortex or portal in the area. He also reported on a story about odd beings who live inside a crystal cave in Brown Mountain. For more information on the Brown Mountain Lights, check out Warren's free ebook and check him out at joshuapwarren.com. And we thank Coast to Coast for this again. Again, you can go over to coasttocoastam.com if you want to read it or get a click through. I know there is. I don't believe that we're competing, so you know, I don't care if you go over there. Go ahead. All right. Well, geez, I don't think. You should see how many cats are in here. If dogs show up, this is going to be crazy. Crazy, I tell you. With all of these vortex cats. I just hope that we don't get vortex dogs. Because if we get vortex dogs, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Well, let's see what else happened. There was a walking creature filmed in Portugal. You know, there are lots of walking creatures. I'm not sure that this is actually news, but here it is. A bizarre video from Portugal appears to show some kind of creature ambling on 2 feet through the desert before disappearing behind a shrub. In the footage, the person behind the camera appears to notice the bipedal anomaly walking near what appears to be a dirt road, and then quickly zooms in on the site to get a better look at it. The vantage point clearly shows a mystery entity that seems to be sporting exceedingly long limbs, slowly walking toward a bush and never reappearing in the scene. Little is known about the origins of the enigmatic video, but that hasn't stopped observers from offering their best guesses as to what may be unfolding in the brief footage. Paranormal enthusiasts have suggested that the creature may be Bigfoot or Chupacabra, while skeptics, of course, argue that the footage is simply a fake. So, this is from the Mirror, but this is also on Coast to Coast AM if you want to go look at the video of the walking creature in Portugal, walking through dunes. You can go there. It happened this week, August 16, if you're looking for the date. Whew, wow, I can't wait, because in just a few minutes we're going to go and listen to James interview Hannah Nordhaus and listen to her wonderful story about ghosts here in New Mexico. And like I said, full moon, we had ghosts here in Madrid this week. We also had a lot of coyotes. Luckily there don't appear to be coyote vortexes, but that could take care of my cat problem if, they would ship me some. Never mind, that's cruel. I know I just freaked out Gail and Lisa and a lot of other people who love critters. I love critters too, but not when there's a ton of them asking for wet food. So Hannah Nordhaus is on in just a few minutes. What's going on in your neck of the woods? Let's chat about it. I'm going to be on chat as soon as we start that interview. Some of the things that are going on around here. Had a breakthrough this week in my own personal alien abduction story. Actually told somebody about it who I was terrified to tell. I don't know if it's a good thing, but I told him. And, for all of you who think that we should all just be great, big, heroic, G.I. Joe tough guys if we're abductees or contactees or paranormal experiencers, it's been 26 years since I started, 26 and a half years since I started doing research, and there are still people that it terrifies me, absolutely terrifies me, to think about telling my truth to. And the one thing I love about Spaced Out Radio and spacedoutradio.com is this is a place where telling the truth is not just put on air. We embrace it, we hold you up, we don't make fun of you if you are telling your truth. If you're not telling a story for attention, you're telling about your experience as you experienced it, what you felt about it, how it affected your life. This is the place for you, and we're so happy to have you here. And we are experiencers too, and we know what it's like to have that moment where you just feel like you're not going to be okay, or it's not okay that you've had the experience that you've had because it's too weird. And why can't you just be normal? Why can't you just be like everybody else? I've been an experiencer that I've known about and not been in denial about for 26 years. I was in denial from age 3 to 23 for 20 years. So a lifetime of this can, make you do a number on yourself. So treat yourself nicely. We're going to treat you nicely too. We're going to bring people to you who have had their own experiences, have their own family experiences, and are willing to share and tell their truth, which may be, what you need to hear at the time. That being said, we're about to go into our first break, and then we'll bring you Hannah Nordhaus and James talking to each other about the American ghost, the great-grandmother in Santa Fe who haunted the place, but good. Everybody knew her. I can't wait. It's going to be a great, great, great show. See you on the other side.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month, where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for. So join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings. No matter where you are, it's time for you to make time for you.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Tonight's edition of Spaced Out Weekend is brought to you by spacedoutradio.com, where you can now sign up to become a Space Traveler member. Now, for the final time tonight, here's Spaced Out Weekend's James Tyson. It's time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend.
13, please. Oh, hi, Kevin. Oh, is that the time? Kevin, my friend, don't you find that watch just a little bit loud? Well, I certainly hope our buddy Bumblefoot is playing when we get there. Oh, you stinky big bundle of hair. I said Bumblefoot, not Bigfoot. Oh, it's going to be a long night.
It's time to head to the 13th floor of the old log cabin for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR. You can find him on Instagram, Spaced Out Weekend, as well as on Facebook. On YouTube, our channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can check out our website, spacedoutradio.com.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere. Watch it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
And now, perched high in his captain's chair, way above the clouds, here's James Tyson.
Thank you, Dave Scott. Yes, it is I. Yeah, it's me, James Tyson, still broadcasting from that little log cabin I have here in the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Networks, located deep in the paranormal portals of the lower left Canadian coast, or what we like to say on this side of the continent, Cascadia, the land of Largefoots and squish-squashes, and a few of the other beasts that roam the wilderness. Tonight with us we have Hannah Nordhaus. She is a journalist and award-winning author of The Beekeeper's Lament and American Ghost, both national bestsellers. Her most recent book, American Ghost, untangles the life and legend of Hannah's great-great-grandmother, Julia Staab. Julia traveled the Santa Fe Trail to New Mexico in 1866 as a mail-order German Jewish bride. Her phantom is reputed to haunt her former home in Santa Fe. In American Ghost, Ghost, Hannah traces the Staab family through 300 years of Germany history, an American immigrant experience, unearthing family diaries, photographs, newspaper clippings, and memories, and exploring how lives became legends and what those legends tell us about who we are. American Ghost is itself a haunting story about the long reach of the past. American Ghost received enthusiastic reviews from Newsweek, NPR, People Magazine, Elle Magazine, the Boston Globe, Entertainment Weekly, and the Denver Post, Minneapolis Star Tribune, and many other newspapers and magazines. It was a winner of the Willa Literary Awards, the Seven Sisters Book Awards, and was named a Denver Post Books of 2015, and one of 20 books we'll read in 2015 by Entertainment Weekly, and one of Elle Magazine's 7 must-read books. Now, this is what we want to talk to Hannah about. Her great-great-grandmother still haunting a home that she used to live in back in the 1800s, which is actually now a hotel. So with that, we welcome Hannah Nordhaus. Hello, Hannah. How are you this evening?
I'm great. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. This is great. I'm very, very interested in your book and your research about the Staab family. Am I saying that right? Staab?
Staab, that works.
Yep. Tell us exactly what happened in your life that kind of turned you on to digging up that part of the history.
I guess it wasn't any particular thing, but the book is a history of my family in New Mexico, and particularly of my great-great-grandmother, Julia Staab, whose ghost is said to haunt a La Posada Hotel in Santa Fe, which is a very fancy hotel in downtown Santa Fe. That was once her home. And so obviously I've known about my family and their history in New Mexico my whole life. When I was a kid, nobody thought she was a ghost at that point. There weren't any ghost stories, or none that I heard. The ghost stories really only started circulating when I was a teenager in the 70s and 80s. I was always, of course, very interested to have a famous ghost in your family. It's pretty darn cool. When I became a writer, the first article I ever published was actually about Julia Staab, but it was just a sort of one-off essay, and then I just went on. I became a journalist. I'm a science journalist. I write about sort of the outdoors and the environment. So it wasn't really in my subject matter. And it was only after I had my first kid a few years ago that I sort of came back to Julia Staab. I just suddenly realized I found an old family history at my family's place in New Mexico and started reading about the family and realized that having this history was really interesting, and that it was more than just a ghost story, that there was this family that I really wanted to learn more about. So that's how the book came about.
Did you get the stories about the ghost? Were they family stories, or were you getting them from, kind of poking around in your family history, and you're getting them from people who have, outside of the family, that may have encountered a spirit activity in the La Posada resort?
Yeah, so not family stories. I would say my family is pretty skeptical. We are not real paranormal types in general. Everybody's, got PhDs and this and that, and they don't consider themselves to be the kind of people who are into ghost stories. But that said, everybody loves a story in the family. But nobody had, my great aunt Lizzie, who she was the one who wrote the family history that I discovered a few years ago that got me going on this book. Lizzie did spend the night in Julia's room after she heard about ghost stories. There's one particular room in the hotel that was Julia's room where she died, and she was shut away for many years before she died. And that's the room that's sort of the locus of the reported activity. And so we had all just started hearing stories around Santa Fe about the ghost. There was a big article in the Santa Fe Reporter in 1978, I believe, that Julia's ghost was supposed to haunt the hotel, which is now that it had been the family house, then it became a boarding house, then it became a hotel. In the late 70s, early 80s, they redid the hotel, so it's back to its sort of Victorian state it was in when my family lived there. People just started telling stories, and you go into the bar, the sort of downstairs area is now the bar, and you go in there, and the bartenders had stories, and the servers, almost everybody who works at the hotel has a story. That was before the internet, but once the internet got rolling, of course, there's lots of ghost stories about Julia Staab floating around on the internet. So she's she's definitely a local celebrity these days, much more than she was during her life.
I looked a little bit into Julia Staab and her life, and it was a hard life. She had, 6 children, or
seven.
One died.
Yeah. 7, one died, and lots of miscarriages, we're told, as well.
But
so, yeah.
back then, I think that's what you did, really. You had a lot of kids.
You didn't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, it was one of those things. And she passed early. She passed at 52, I believe.
Yes.
And her husband, Abraham, died a few years later. Well, quite a few years later. What was their primary... she was obviously a housewife and mom. With that many children, probably not a lot of time to do anything else. But what was Abraham, her husband? What was his career?
So, yeah, her husband was named Abraham Staab. He was a German-Jewish immigrant. He'd come from Westphalia, from Germany in the 1850s, and came over, and he had some cousins who had a dry goods business in Santa Fe. So he and his brother went to work for the cousins' dry good business. For a couple of years, they were drummers, which is a traveling salesman. And then he and his brother started their own firm, a wholesale dry goods firm called Z. Staab and Bro. Abraham was the bro, and they ran the firm for many years. They did very well. They were the biggest wholesaler in the Southwest. They sold stuff that starting in St. Louis along the Santa Fe Trail, and then they sold stuff down into northern Mexico, Arizona. They had huge territory and sold everything you can imagine. So they made a lot of money. During the Civil War, the Confederates invaded Santa Fe and held it for a while. The Staab brothers smartly sided with the Union soldiers, who then took it back over, and then they became big suppliers also of the U.S. Army. So they made a fortune, and then in 1865, right after the war ended, Abraham became a U.S. citizen and went back to Germany to find a bride. Julia came from the same village he came from in Germany, and they married. It was a pretty quick courtship. I suspect either arranged or a sort of bridal shopping trip. They were married on Christmas Day, 1865. She was also Jewish. And they hopped on a boat. They arrived on, it was the fastest boat on the Atlantic. I'm trying to remember, I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was, everybody went on first class, and they arrived in New York. They married Christmas Day, arrived in New York, January 12th. And then set off on the Santa Fe Trail for Julia's new home, which she'd obviously never been to. So they were quite wealthy there, and he continued to build his merchant firm. When he died in 1913, he was the richest man in New Mexico. I think, he had over $1 million, which was a lot back then, especially in New Mexico, where, everything was quite inexpensive. So she started having kids right when she got to Santa Fe. She had her first daughter in November of 1866, then had 6 quick kids in quite quick succession. She had a second daughter. Then my great-grandmother, Bertha Staab, was her third daughter. Then she had 4 sons within 4 years. And then much later, she lost a daughter. And at that point, they lived in an adobe on Burro Alley, which was sort of the gambling and red light district of Santa Fe. It was a pretty rough street. And then in 1882, Abraham built Julia this beautiful Second Empire home, one of the first brick buildings in Santa Fe. That's where her last child was born there, the one that died. Henrietta was her name. And then she lived there until her death in 1896.
It is a good immigrant story. It's a rags to riches kind of immigrant story coming to the New World. And I could just imagine Abraham going back home to his village and going to the local synagogue and saying, "Look, I'm rich. I need a wife." And a bunch of women holding their daughter's hands up. Saying,
yes, exactly.
Okay,
it was a good. Julia actually came from a much wealthier family than Abraham did over in Germany. And she was one of 11 or 12 daughters. I sometimes wonder, she was clearly not pretty fragile and mentally unstable. She, as you mentioned, she had a rough life, lots of childbirth, lots of miscarriages. And she was never particularly well suited for life on the frontier. She was a pretty delicate person. And I sometimes wonder maybe whether the family said, "Take this one, get her off of our hands," because I think she was always fairly troubled. But that's just speculation as well. But it was good. It was a good life for an immigrant. It was definitely, as you said, an immigrant story. That's the reason I called it American Ghost, just because it really, beneath this ghost story, is this very American story of a slightly weird twist on the typical Jewish immigrants to America, but this family, coming over, getting on the boat, landing in New York, and making good, and bringing up these children that were very American and became my family. And then this story of the ghost also became a sort of legendary in the town that they helped build.
It's funny when you say that she was, we'll call it disturbed, because we don't really know if it was a mental health issue or something environmental as she's growing up, but it kind of set her off in a bit of a different path socially, we'll call it. And I've run into that when talking to people who have apparitions, or we'll just say ghosts in a residence. And even when I do a paranormal investigation, the ones who haven't, quote unquote, crossed over usually have a history of being either mental health issues, or there was something in their life, as I say, environmental or chemical, that held them a little bit different than someone else. And
yes,
it just never got to that point where they crossed over.
That's certainly what both the ghost stories would have you believe. And one of the things that I did as part of my research, as I mentioned, I come from a real rationalist background, but it seemed like in exploring both the story and the history, I sort of needed to leave no stone unturned. And so one of the things I did do was meet with a lot of psychic mediums to get their take on the story of Julia Staab. I talked to a psychic once, one late night in New York after a party, a Christmas party, and sort of stumbled into a psychic storefront there. But I'd never done that sort of thing before. It was quite uncomfortable, but it was very interesting to hear these stories. And there was a lot of contradiction. Some of them, there were some people who I felt had a better version of the story than others. But there were some things that they all sort of agreed on. And that may have been because I fed them some information as well. But there was a sense that Julia, was troubled, and there was something holding her back. There was some reason why she couldn't leave the house, and she wouldn't cross over. The family was very close with the Archbishop of New Mexico. He's New Mexico's first Archbishop, Jean-Baptiste Lamy, who he's made famous in Willa Cather's novel that was based on his life, Death Comes for the Archbishop. My family used to always joke that our families were close. Our family was close with the Archbishop, and there's a story, and it's in my book, and it's not clear how true it is, that Abraham Staab actually helped finance the building of Santa Fe's famous cathedral after the Archbishop ran out of money. And then there was also some indication that Julia and the Archbishop were very close. And my family used to joke that instead of, we would write a romance novel about Julia and the Archbishop, and instead of being Death Comes for the Archbishop, it would be Love Comes for the Archbishop. And so as part of this sort of no stone unturned project for finding out about Julia's life and death and ghost story, one of the things I did was get my DNA tested to see if there was any chance that the Archbishop could be my great-great-grandfather instead of Abraham. And I got, you can't, without sort of exhuming his body, it's hard to get real precise results. So I did something called an autosomal DNA test, which is just sort of tells you generally where you're from and sort of what your heritage is. And it turned out initially on the first set of results that I actually have less Jewish blood than I should. I should be 3/4 Jewish, and instead I was 60% with a margin of error of plus or minus 9%. And also that I was French, which the Archbishop was French. So, which I've never, I have no French in my family tree. So, so that opened, up more questions that of course are like many of the details of Julia Staab's life lost to history, because we'll never know for certain unless we exhume the bodies, which I don't think is going to happen. So, but Abraham, there's stories about Abraham as well being, that he was unfaithful, that he had Julia killed because he had a mistress. But, I found no indication that was the case. He was a wealthy traveling man in the 19th century that I certainly wouldn't doubt that he perhaps took advantage of the many opportunities he had to have mistresses, but there's no record that he fathered other children.
I guess the only way we're going to find out some of that information is actually talk to Julia.
Indeed, yeah.
Has anyone tried?
I tried.
That? Oh, you did?
Well, I tried, yeah, with the with all the mediums. I did try, and I talked to a lot of versions of Julia, I would say, and who knows which is the right one, or if I believe what I see, and I heard a lot of very interesting takes on her story, but I don't know that I could ever say this was the one who was really right. I definitely had some really uncanny experiences. But I never talked to her directly. It was always through a medium because I think I'm not the right ghost.
You're not the right ghost speaker.
I'm not a sensitive.
When I do paranormal investigations, I just use digital recorders and some other devices, and we seem to get good responses that way. So the next time you're out in New Mexico, just take your little digital recorder with you and sit there and ask her to come forward and ask some questions.
I did spend a night in her room. I write about that in the book. I did not bring any paraphernalia. And I could, obviously, I think a lot of people now, especially since the book came out, have spent nights in a room. They do not allow ghost hunting teams in there. They did. There's actually an episode of Unsolved Mysteries about Julia Staab's room, house, that aired in, I want to say, 1994. And they did have a ghost hunting team come in there with tons of equipment, and it was the sort of results were not particularly edifying. And I think they said there could certainly be a ghost here. That was sort of the final.
It's one of the things we find too. You can get an area where business people say, or the residents of a public building say, yeah, we get things all the time. There are things moving. We hear giggles. We hear footsteps, and they'll say, please come in here. And as soon as we get in there, there's nothing. One of the paranormal investigators from back east, what he will do is come in with a team, set up all their gear, and not say a word, and then they'd leave. They'd come back about half an hour later and do their thing, and they go back and listen to their evidence, and all the chatting is while they're setting up, and then as they're coming back in. And you'll hear one voice saying, okay, they're back. Everyone just be quiet. And it's like, well, yeah, because they know what you're doing, so they know you're coming back. It was very, very interesting, his experiences with, we'll call them just ghosts or spirits on the other side, where they are actually keeping their mouth shut and knowingly hiding on them. So
it's like kids playing hide and seek.
You've got your book, and it is an interesting book, and those listeners out there can go and read a little bit more about it. Go to www.hannanordhaus.com. That's Hannah Nordhaus, and Nordhaus is Nordhaus, the good German way of spelling Nordhaus.
Yeah, Nordhaus.
It's a Nordhausens Boeken, and hannanordhaus.com. Go to her website, click on articles. There's actually, and Staab Tales, that was kind of interesting, but the articles, there are some interesting articles about it, and the tales themselves actually were somebody had got scratched, I think, in there. Came out of, it was an article in the Tales calling, seriously, this happened. Is that your writing, or is that?
Yeah, so what I've been doing, I have been great at keeping it up, but I put together a little section on my website just to collect stories as they come in, because I figured as people read the book, I might learn more. So either experiences at La Posada, or also family stories that didn't make it into the book, because I have, as I mentioned, run across a lot of distant relatives because of the book who, contact me and say, I'm related to your great great aunt, blah, blah, blah. And so, all people descended from Julia Staab. And so on the Staab Tales section of my website, I share stories both of the family and of people's experiences at La Posada. And I was actually down there for an event last fall, and they had actually, it was very cool. They had a dinner at the house, and they cleared out all the bedrooms that were hotel rooms. There's I think 3 rooms up, so it's very loud. If you spend the night there, it's real. It's hard to sleep. There's the bar on the lower floor of the house, and then the upper floor is 3 rooms, which is Julia's suite, and then there's a room that we believe was Abraham's room, and then a 3rd room, and they're typically our guest rooms. And again, if you do stay there, don't expect to sleep much because the bar's pretty noisy. But for the party, they cleared out all the furniture and put tables there and served us dinner, and in the bedrooms and then in the downstairs rooms as well. And the crew that was moving the furniture told me this story that the night, it was right, the day before we arrived, they were moving the furniture out. And one of the guys started feeling some itching on his back and shoulder. And he started sort of wiggling around and saying, I don't, there's a spider on me. And the other guy, he asked the guy who was moving the furniture with him to pull up his shirt and see if there was anything on his back. And the guy pulled up his shirt and there was nothing there. He said, "Oh, you got a mole." He said, "I know I have a mole." Put the shirt down. They started moving the furniture again. This is in Julia's room. They start moving the furniture again, and then it happens again. And he's like, "Oh, God, it's really killing me." So his friend pulls up his shirt again, and there are 3 scratches now on the sort of back of his shoulder that were not there just 30 seconds before when the guy had lifted the shirt up. So the suspicion is it was Julia, and she didn't want him moving the furniture out of her room. Apparently, the stories that you hear that she does not like it when people mess with the house. So, I was there. The picture on my website. I didn't take the picture, but I met the guy. He showed me the picture, and it happened like 3 nights before while preparing for this party we were at.
Yeah, and those pictures are on your website, HannahNordhaus.com, under Staab Tales.
Yes.
Titled, "Seriously, This Happened." And that's kind of good. And you get into the arguments or the discussions and some of the television shows involved in paranormal. They're saying 3 scratches are demonic because they represent the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, and things like that. But honestly, sometimes you just get scratched or bitten by something. Our paranormal group, one of the fellows got bitten in the leg, and he felt like he had a burn. He pulled up his pants and looked at it, and we have a great photograph of it, and it's a complete bite mark where you can actually look at each tooth and see how one kind of overlaps another one, and the whole thing. If you had the dental records, you would be able to match them up. So again, it was on his leg.
And it was during a
paranormal investigation. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was, how often you get bit, like, and of course it feels like a burn because I guess that's just the energy coming through. But when he kind of dropped his pants, there was this bite mark, and come take a picture of this. No, pull your pants up and we'll look at it. But it was a bizarre thing, and scratches are common, and it's specifically when you get into messing around with somebody's environment. Obviously, her energy doesn't want to cross over. It just wants to stay there and the status quo, because it was a happy place and good energy wherever she's staying, or there's something else there keeping her back. Is she looking for, there's so many questions. Is she looking for the child that was lost? Did she, who knows? And it's one of those things I'd love to ask. Actually, I have a really good psychic who could probably find out, but as long as I don't tell her anything about this, she'll be good. I hate giving, like you said, you fed a little bit too maybe some information to them, and it really goes with then your judgment on what they're saying.
Yes, and it's interesting. So I probably met with 6 or 7 psychics, maybe a couple more, and all of them except one, I told, I gave them varying degrees of information. I wasn't out, I wasn't doing a gotcha thing. I didn't, you're either going to believe or you don't. So I didn't really see the point in trying to prove that they were psychics or not, So I usually told them I wanted to speak to my great-great-grandmother who haunted a hotel in Santa Fe. And so from that information, you can get that it was probably the 19th century, that it's a hotel, it's probably like a fancy house, so there's a lot of stuff you can glean from that. The only person, I went to this psychic colony in, you've probably heard of it, in
New York?
Casadega. Oh. No, the other one. It was the summer version of the Lilydale. It's Casadega in outside of Orlando.
Yes.
And my in-laws are from Orlando, so I just looped it into a family visit. And they have, they're pretty protective of their community there. So I met with this Reverend Judy, who was their sort of head PR person, dealt with the media, and she hadn't originally known that I was going to have that I wanted to have a reading. She thought I was just coming to visit and tour and talk. And so then she arranged a reading last minute with one of their resident psychics, and she said, "Don't tell him anything." So he was the only person that I didn't say who I was trying to reach. And it was an hour-long reading, and the entire time, he just didn't go anywhere near Julia Staab. Until the very end, I finally got a patient and said, well, actually, I wanted to talk to my great-great-grandmother, but he was telling me how I was going to get married and that, I had a conversation with my step-grandmother, so it was an interesting visit, but without having set him on the right track, it was not very productive in terms of communicating with Julia Staab. So, take of that what you will. That if you don't give him much information, you may not get what you want to hear.
Yeah. Do you have a step-grandmother?
I did.
Oh.
She had just died right before. So, maybe she just really wanted to talk to me. She had just died a few weeks before I went to Casadega. And he started talking about someone's teeth. And it was my grandfather and his laugh. And, I said, oh, that's probably my grandfather. And then they said, there's a woman coming in. And it was his wife, Marge, who had just died. So, it was... in that respect, and she was also on my mind too, of course, because she had just died. So
I find the whole story about your great-great-grandmother fascinating, and one of the main reasons is you're writing about it, researching it, and it's like Ancestry.com meets Ghost Hunters. It is a bit of an anomaly in paranormal writing that you're actually going back and you have a ghost of somebody 3 generations or 2 generations ahead of you, and you can dig into the past. She's famous enough where there is some other writing on her.
Well, I think it's rare in the paranormal community, and I think as a consequence, people don't quite know what to do with the book, because when they read it, it's not a typical paranormal book. So no. I do want to warn your listeners that it's a it's really a history book.
Yeah.
With built around this paranormal episode.
Yeah, well, 300 years of German history and American immigrant experience is more of a history as opposed to what's happened, since she passed. But we were talking about the psychic, your psychic. I was going to say issues. Your psychic contacts.
You could say that.
Yeah, it's better in these type of situations. In my experience, if you have a soul or spirit or energy that hasn't moved on, if you're on one end of the country and asking a psychic to have that spirit step forward, well, they won't, because that spirit is not in a place where they will step forward. It's a little more awkward because that spirit literally is just wandering around one location, a little bit confused, and very comfortable as long as nobody moves the table. Like, where is my lamp? And then they get a bit cranky. And we find that a lot with the getting cranky with movement. There's a building not too far from here. It was built about 1910. And they've tore out the insides of it and are building lofts and modern apartments and modern businesses in it. And the workers will come in the next day and their tools have all been moved, so it's really slowing them down. And that's common when you have an energy that's just not wanting change, because it's change that stressed them, if you can imagine energy being stressed. But you've got an energy in New Mexico, and if you're in Fort Lauderdale or wherever doing this, to get that spirit to come over, that's darn near impossible. You could possibly contact like somebody connected to Abraham who could then say, well, this is what we see is going on there, because the other side can kind of pass on secondhand information. It won't be exact, but it'll be sort of connected. It's actually going there with a medium or somebody who's open to seeing things on the other side or communicating with things on the other side. That's where you get information. And we did that at a Fort Worden out of Washington State. It was built as a U.S. Army fort from 1905 to 1953. And we had psychic mediums there who, were talking to people in the hallway that we could hear walking up and down the hall. And they described who they were, and and then being it's actually a state park now, we can go back and say, oh yeah, Bob was the guy who used to be here. in 1958, or not 58, but 1948, and hasn't crossed over. So it's that. Keep that in mind for any other time you might be bouncing down there.
Well, I will say, so I did meet with one woman who runs a psychic institute in Santa Fe, and we actually met in the house. And I will say, obviously, she said that, which I found surprising, because of course I think my great-grandmother's the most famous person in Santa Fe, but not everybody's heard of her. She said she'd never heard of Julia before. And we, sat in the library, and she did a reading, and everything she said just completely resonated. It seemed like, but she was just there, it's hard not to imagine. And I can't really remember. I mean, I have it interviewed how much information I gave her. I don't think I gave her very much, except for, she lived here. She's supposed to be a ghost. And the things she said just completely felt true to me. There's another woman who, at the very end, I was I'd done, I'd had enough psychics. I was didn't feel like I was going to get any more information that would illuminate the story in any way. And I went to a friend's party, and she just sort of randomly rented 2 psychics for the party. And they gave us 10-minute readings. And I went into one to talk to one, and she also, the things she said, she knew sort of figured out the names of the children. She said it wasn't the baby that Julia was waiting for in the house. It was one of her sons, and his name started with a J. And there is one of her sons, Julius, and she said she sees Jules, and his name is Julius, and he committed suicide, and she thought that it was related to that. And she subsequently, after the book came out, she lives in Boulder, where I live, and she came to my book signing. And it was very funny. At the book signing, I described her as having purple hair, and she came to the book signing and her hair was orange. And I said, did your hair change color? She said, no, the purple, that was my aura. She said, people always see purple. So I guess she subsequently, Julia kept sort of barging in on her and bothering her, or contacting her, I should say. I don't think she was bothering her. And so she finally decided she had to go down to Santa Fe and stay in the room. And a few months ago, this last, I think it was in late April, she went down there and spent the night in the room. She said she didn't sleep all night. She was up all night talking to Julia, and she felt that she had finally set her free. But so she was, and she keeps calling back to the hotel and asking if anybody's had any experiences. And she says that she hasn't heard of any. So perhaps she finally broke through. But so I have actually had some experiences and facilitated some experiences on site with Julia.
Oh, that's perfect. Now,
yeah.
That's the goal in my paranormal group, is to identify somebody who's left behind and try to move them on. And we have a shaman that helps us with that, who's also a crazy psychic, crazy in a good way. But he's and that's what we do. And that's, unfortunately, that's not what a lot of these groups do. They'll go in there and say, "Yeah, it's a ghost. We got it to knock over a bookshelf. We asked to be touched. They touched me, and we ran screaming down the hall and high five and let's go home." Meanwhile, they've got this poor thing trapped, walking in circles. So if your medium got actually interacted and connected, those are very special people with those tools. And I can't remember if they're called transport mediums, where they'll actually move those along and describe to the energy what they have to look for to carry on and cross over. I wonder if her son, let's say Julius,
yes.
Julius, I wonder if he was still hanging around too. Was there any information of a young male in the building, or was it always Julia?
I've heard there's a young boy in the building, and some people think it's Julia's lost child, but her lost child was actually an infant girl, baby. And, different people say they're different. Someone said there's like a Native American spirit in there. So I've heard different things, but I haven't heard, Julius, when he killed himself, was, I think, 39 or 40. So I haven't, and he wasn't, he died in Switzerland and wasn't living in the house.
Yeah.
And I think that family, it was just after his father had died. So it was 1913. So, I don't know who was in the house at that point. It had not sold by the family yet, but I don't think anybody was really living there. So I don't know that he would be associated with that house. But of course, you never. I mean, I don't know that logic really plays a role when talking about ghosts.
No, they're all over the place. In fact, and since about 2011, 2012, they're our paranormal group who prior to that, and a few of the other ones, they would get one call a month maybe by somebody who has entity bouncing around, or they think they do. And then after October, November of that year, now we're down to like one call every 2 days, because it seems like they're all over the place. People are connecting to them now. They're seeing things that they hadn't seen before. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've got, this rash of paranormal television shows. You know, we went through everyone seeing ghosts and, ghost hunters. Now there's depends on your religious background. One person's ghost is another person's demon. And then you've got all the demon television shows. So it's not that it's become trendy. It's just that there are more and more people actually connecting to it, and or coming out of the woodwork saying, "Yeah, I didn't know other people saw these things. I thought it was just me." But it's kind of nice to have a famous dead person in your family, and I don't mean that as like it. It's nice to be related to Einstein, but he passed away. But to have actually somebody who passed away who's still bouncing around, that is kind of cool. That's
we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah,
we like it in our family.
And you should be proud too that if she's passed on, it's really good. Now you'll be able to go to the psychic in Fort Lauderdale and have her step forward. And perhaps, yeah, as opposed to the guesses. Yeah, that is a very interesting story. And again, it's the American Ghost, and you go to HannahNordhaus.com, and that's where you're going to find it. You went back 300 years in your family history?
Yes, I traced I went back to Germany, where Abraham and Julia came from. They came from a town called Luchta, which is in northwestern Germany. And so it was pretty cool, because when I started, I didn't know, I had never used any of the ancestry websites. Genealogy was not my thing any more than ghost hunting was my thing. And so I got into both, and I went back to Germany. I through my Aunt Betsy, who has collected some family history, I figured out where they came from. I didn't even know that. I thought I knew they came from sort of the western area of Germany, but that's it. So I went back. I found some historians who had traced the history of the Jewish families in that region. And there was one woman, my great grandfather. His name was Max Nordhaus. He married Bertha, who is Julia's third daughter. He came from a town called Paderborn. So I actually thought that's where Julia and Abraham came from as well. And I found a historian in Paderborn who then connected me and told me a lot about the history of the family there, because some of Julia's siblings ended up in Paderborn. That was one of the closer big cities to her little village. But then she connected me with a historian in that little village. And so I went back to the town. It's very well preserved. All these old Fachwerk, which is the frame and timber houses. They're sort of those quintessential German houses with the peaked roofs and the wood, the brown wood and the white plaster. And, the old, it wasn't destroyed in the wars. So these houses were all 300, 400 years old. And he showed me the house where Julia's family had been. And they, as far as we can tell, the Jews in Germany didn't get last names until the early 19th century. So before that, in the histories, it was just Isaac the Jew was what they would be called in the histories. But her family, was traced back to the early 18th century, and I'm pretty sure that they had been there for a while before that. So so it was very, just for me, so personally rewarding to go back and see the house where they lived in, and the village where they came from, and the landscape that Julia lived in before she came to New Mexico. And it was such a vastly different place than Santa Fe in the 1860s, which was just dusty. There, nothing there, no trees. And she came from this verdant, beautiful valley in the sort of foothills in Germany. And what a shock it must have been for her.
Oh, amazing. I think of geography, the geography of that part of the world in Europe would be close to what you would have found almost in Colorado to a point, and what I find here, green forests and babbling little creeks and, stone homes, and you get down there and it's adobe and flat and dust and sand.
Yeah. And it was a real rough town then. I mean, and as I mentioned, she lived on Burro Alley, which is where they sold the burros, and they, where people got firewood, but it's also the red light district. It's sort of where all the gambling establishments were. So she came from this, to go to, it was also, when I visited her village, it was just the most beautiful October day. The leaves were in their full glory, and the sun, it was like New Mexico and Colorado sun, it was like 70 degrees and just gorgeous out. And so I saw her village at, I'm sure it's most beautiful, but then she gets to Santa Fe and it's just, just shootings every night, completely lawless, no sort of European amenities. That all came later. The sort of the sidewalks and trees and just everything the Santa Fe we see now, this beautiful tourist town, it's beautiful. It's surrounded by these beautiful mountains, and it's got this sort of stark desert beauty to it, but it's nothing like a young 21-year-old bride from Germany would have ever imagined in her wildest dreams where she'd end up.
Oh yeah, I could imagine that, and that would be a little bit on the depressing side. And you would start making, in my opinion, somebody like that would just make their immediate surroundings home, like turn their home into their center of their life. They wouldn't be wanting to go out explore in the 20, 30 miles away. You'd want to just stay in your garden.
Well, yeah, not to mention the fact that she was having babies like crazy. So I don't think she had a lot of opportunity. She was also a 19th century woman, right? So there's just not a lot of opportunities to go out and be an intrepid explorer. I mean, there were women who did it, but she was not. I don't get the sense that either by constitution or by circumstance she was really out there exploring the wilds of the desert frontier. She was home raising babies. And interesting. So the family, they were, as I mentioned, very wealthy, and they were always in the newspapers. I was really fortunate to write this book when I did, because if I'd written it even 5 or 10 years before, all the newspapers now are archived digitally, searchable by name. Fortunately, the family Staab is an unusual name, especially at that era in New Mexico. So I was able to find all these newspaper stories about the Staabs, and they were sort of in the middle of Santa Fe society. And I think being immigrants, being Jews, is really different experience in Santa Fe than in New York, where everybody sort of is among their own in these sort of ghetto neighborhoods, in these tenements. And in Santa Fe, they were wealthy. They were going to fancy parties all the time, and they took callers on Thursdays and went horseback riding with the gold-headed riding canes, and they were really the center of society in Santa Fe. So I found lots of stories about them, and but there wasn't much about Julia at all in the early years. And it was only after her kids, sort of after she lost the baby in 1883, that you heard more about her. And when she wasn't raising kids anymore, or her kids were older. And so I think she, her life was probably, when she first came to Santa Fe, really circumscribed and small, and only when her kids got older and she probably stopped being pregnant all the time did things get a little better for her for a short period of time, and then things went downhill again.
Yeah, because there were, I guess you researched and found out there were rumors that you'd kind of gone a little bit off the deep end.
Yeah, so the stories, if you look on the internet for Julia Staab, they say that she lost this baby. She moved into the house, lost the baby, and then never emerged again. And one of the things I found through all these newspaper searches was that was not the case. She was actually out and about. She was going to parties. They, would stay out dancing till midnight. She went up. They opened Abraham helped finance a railroad spur from Santa Fe to Denver. She went up with her daughters and Abraham for the opening of the railroad spur and danced all night. She wore red velvet and was dripping with diamonds. So she was not a shut-in at that period. But then something happened. I mean, it was clear there there's indications that she was depressed all along. There's a nun named Sister Blandina Segale who wrote a memoir of her years in Santa Fe, and Abraham had asked the Archbishop to have a nun take care of Julia, and she said I didn't even know they used the word depressed then, but she said she was severely depressed, and he asked Sister Blandina to help Julia out. So that was in 1877. So she's already depressed back then. Then she raises her kids. She's sort of out and about. And then in 1891, my great grandmother Bertha, she kept a travel diary, and I was fortunate enough my Aunt Lizzie had written about it in her book about the family, but nobody knew where it was, and I was fortunate enough to find it through a cousin had it in some boxes at her house, and the diary describes a family trip to Germany in 1891. I can't remember if it was 1891. I think it was 1891, and they basically go from, they arrive in Germany, and she says, Mama's going to Berlin to see Dr. Olshausen. And so, bless the internet. I get on the internet, search Dr. Olshausen, and it turns out he's a pioneer in gynecological surgery. He was sort of helped pioneer the modern hysterectomy. And so she goes to Dr. Olshausen, comes back to the town where her family's living at this point, then goes back to Berlin and has a surgery. And I can only assume that she had a hysterectomy. And so I thought, oh, okay, so maybe her problems weren't mental. Maybe she had woman problems. And but then, I started to do some research on how they treated women's health in that era. And in fact, they sort of treated women's problems and mental illness the same, which was they thought all mental illness arose from the womb. That's sort of hysterectomy, hysteria all come from the word hysteria, from the womb. And so they basically, if the women had mental problems, they'd give them a hysterectomy, or, and so she went from there. Then she recovered from the surgery, went to a spa where she was also a place that's famous for treating women's problems, where she would drink 64 cups of mineral waters, special waters that treated her ailments a day, and tried to recover there, and that didn't work. And then she went to another spa. She went to Hanover, and then at some point in that period, Bertha, my great grandmother, wrote that she had a horrible accident, and a dreadful accident is what she said. And she said, I can't even talk about what it was. But the doctor, removed. It had happened 2 weeks before, and the doctor had just removed her bandages, he said. And so after that accident, and that's all, I never found out more about it. The psychics didn't know. Nobody could really tell me. I suspect maybe it was a suicide attempt, but I don't know. But after that, she basically was never seen in public again. She stayed in Germany. So that was, I think, early 1892 was when she had the accident, and it was in Hanover, where her mother was living. And then the diary ends, and I, found newspaper accounts saying if Mrs. A. Staab, who's Julia, if she's better, she'll return to Santa Fe in the spring. And then, she ended up staying another year and came back in October of 1893. And went home and was never seen in public again. And her daughter Delia, her second daughter, was married in 1894. And the wedding, all the family weddings were at the house, this lovely grand house. And it describes the wedding, and Julia didn't even attend the wedding. It said, she didn't attend the mother. Someone else attended the bride because the mother of the bride couldn't attend because of illness. So she was upstairs in her room while her daughter got married, and she was too sick or too whatever she was to attend that wedding. And that was 1894. And then she died in the spring of 1896.
We know what she died of?
We don't. The newspaper, account says sudden death after a long illness. And again, some people suspect suicide. I sort of think perhaps it was suicide, or just, she had just completely fallen apart and
given up.
Yeah. Yeah, one or the other. She clearly wasn't well. She wasn't able to go out in public. Unless something like maybe the accident was some sort of was disfiguring, but it's pretty clear that she was not functional. And there are some, I've met some third cousins in my research who they actually said their mother Delia was the one, or their grandmother was the one who had gotten married in 1894 when Julia didn't come downstairs to attend, and she killed herself when she in her 80s in a hotel room in Boston where she lived. She lived in a fancy hotel after her husband died. It was very wealthy, and then her daughter, who was named Julia, also killed herself. She jumped out of the window of a hotel, and so Julia, the granddaughter of Julia, her sons are both in their 70s, and I interviewed both of them, and they feel very strongly that Julia, the elder, Julia Staab, had committed suicide as well, and that had always been the story that was passed down in their family.
Do we know the Julia that jumped out of a hotel? Do you know much about that story? Where the hotel was?
New York City.
It was New York.
Manhattan. Okay. Yeah.
Because that Julia jumping out of a window in a hotel, it was familiar to me from another interview or something I had read. So but it wasn't. It was on the West Coast. That was another Julia.
They were doing it everywhere.
Yeah, Julias. You know what
suicidal
they're like.
Julias. Yeah.
It's a shame. I know that their home had the ballroom on the third floor, their living quarters and living rooms and things were on the second floor, and I guess downstairs was the entrance and kitchen area and help. But I think that it was the third floor ballroom after she had passed was destroyed by fire and rebuilt. And I was looking at some photos of the home itself, and it was it looked like a hotel back then. It was one of these big, huge, kind of square, beautiful old buildings, and I'm really glad it's still there.
Yeah, it's a really cool house, and they've done a great job of, they restored it, so it's got the parquet floors, these incredible brass light fixtures and lots of mahogany woodwork. It's really a cool building. It's not huge. It's, obviously part of it burned down. So when the fire happened, it was the house was sold out of the family in 1921. And in 1924 is when the fire happened, and there had been an addition built on, and I think it was in the wiring. It sort of moved up through the wiring of the addition between the original house and I guess this third floor ballroom burned down, and then the back of the house burned down. So it's only the front, which is still, it's big, but it's not like the kind of 50,000 square foot mansion we expect from our rich people today.
Yeah.
And, I imagine it was bigger back then, but I think it was also, they were small little Victorian people with small little Victorian rooms, and they just didn't, the grandeur, was in the details.
Yeah.
But it was a big house. And so what the hotel has done is they built an adobe structure around the original Victorian house. So you can't see the facade anymore. You actually, well, you can see a bit of it when you go into the hotel. You sort of walk into the reception area and then go up, and then there's actually the original front steps are there, and it has his AS, Abraham Staab, his initials sort of in gilt over the door, and then you walk into the old preserved house. So but it's surrounded by a much bigger structure now. That's the restaurant and the reception area. And then most of the rooms in the hotel are little adobe casitas on the grounds, which also beautiful grounds, these gardens that Julia planted, and apparently with Archbishop Lament, who also had a green thumb, and they imported lots of apricot trees and all these beautiful flowers. And so the grounds are still quite lovely.
You mean your ancestor, Archbishop? Oh, yeah. We're going to come back with some more from Hannah Nordhaus after this break, and I want to talk to her about the nun and Billy the Kid right after this.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in. and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month, where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for, so join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. It's time for you to make time for you.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Tonight's edition of Spaced Out Weekend is brought to you by spacedoutradio.com, where you can now sign up to become a Space Traveler member. Now, for the final time tonight, here's Spaced Out Weekend's James Tyson.
Welcome back, everybody, to Spaced Out Weekend with meine Fruden, Frau Nordhaus. We had with our friend Hannah Nordhaus. It's so German. I just love. I don't speak German, but it's just one of those things. I spoke German in another life, which is a whole. Have you ever had a? No, you wouldn't have a past life regression.
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of, yeah. I actually had one and thinking that I had something to do with the British in World War II in an airplane and stuff, and I ended up being a Luftwaffe pilot in World War II.
Wow.
And then die in a hospital in Freiburg of respiratory illness caused by my chain smoking, which is probably why I just hate smoke right now. Like all through my life, I hate smoking and being around people who smoke. But yeah, it was very odd. Had a complete different side, and I was a German Luftwaffe pilot at the same time my dad was flying over in the RAF shooting at German Luftwaffe pilots. So there's my dad and I hanging out at 30,000 feet over Western Europe. Before at the break, I mentioned your the nun and Billy the Kid. Now, what's the backstory for that? You had told me that off air, and it sounded rather interesting.
Yes. So, as I mentioned previously, there was a nun named Sister Blandina Segale who took care of Julia Staab. She was a sister of charity. She came from Cincinnati as a young woman. I think she was 21, 22 years old. And she took the Santa Fe Trail in 1876, somewhere around then, 1876-ish, mid-1870s. And it landed in Trinidad, Colorado, first, where she taught in a school and helped build I think she helped build a hospital there as well. And she was there for a couple of years. And while she was there, Billy the Kid was running rampant in the area. And she, at some point, someone asked her to come tend to one of the kid's gang who was injured. And so she took care of this guy for a couple of months while he died slowly of lead poisoning from being shot in the leg. He and his partner shot each other when they got in a fight. His partner died and he slowly faded away. And so Billy the Kid at some point came in and said, well, how can I thank you, sister? And she said he had come in he was going to scalp all the doctors who wouldn't treat the gangster while he was dying, or the gang member. Mm-hmm. And so she said, well, what you can do for me is not kill the 4 physicians. And he said, okay, fine, I won't kill anybody. And if you should ever need my help again, just call. So a couple of months later, Sister Blandina is restationed in Santa Fe. And one of her first tasks in Santa Fe, much to her dismay, was to take care of Julia Staab because she was severely depressed, and the Archbishop asked that she help out. So she cared for Julia and her kids for a few weeks, and then Abraham, Julia's husband, asked her if she would take Julia to Europe. And Sister Blandina, she said, I have no affection for wealthy women, for taking care of wealthy women. So she said, no way, I'm not going to Europe. And he said, well, how about New York? Why don't you take her to New York, and then she can get on a boat to Europe from there? And she said, no, my mission is here. And he said, well, how about Trinidad, which is where the railroad ended at that point. So I'm not sure if she agreed or was impugned upon by the Archbishop and her superiors in the convent there to take Julia to Trinidad. So they all set out on a stagecoach to Trinidad, and warns her before she leaves. She's with another nun, and he warns her that Billy the Kid's running rampant. And she says, I have no fear, Billy the Kid. And she heads on the stagecoach. They go down to Trinidad. They see Julia off. And then Abraham says, well, let's head back to Santa Fe. And they decide they're going to set the land speed record from Trinidad to Santa Fe in a hack, which is like a 4-horse coach. And they set off, and they get to their first stop that night, and everybody's going crazy because Billy the Kid's lurking around. And so she goes, he's just right off by the stage stop. So she goes and walks around in the sort of front yard area of the stage stop. And the next day they set out, and the driver announces that there's someone coming, and it's Billy the Kid, and he's galloping fast towards them. And Abraham, my 5'2" great-great-grandfather, Jewish merchant, pulls out his rifle, and the other guy he's with pulls out his rifle, and Sister Blandina says, put your rifles down, I'll deal with this. And she sticks her head out the window of the coach, and Billy the Kid sees her, and he rears up on his horse and salutes her and rides off. And so she saves the day, saves my great-grandfather from being robbed or worse by Billy the Kid, and then they head off to Santa Fe and set the land speed record. So she's officially known as the fastest nun in the West.
Oh, that is very cool.
Yeah, I will say before people get all fired up, because I don't know if your paranormal audience is the same as the people who are crazy about Billy the Kid, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to say, what was Billy the Kid doing in Trinidad in the May of 1877? There were 2 Billy the Kids roaming New Mexico at the time, and this Billy the Kid was not the famous one that everybody's heard of. This was another guy who seems... from what I gather about him, he was much worse. The young Billy the Kid, William Bonney, who's the one he was down in southern New Mexico, and he was sort of more heroic and sort of a good guy in an outlaw kind of way. But this guy sounds like he was just bad news, and so he was in northeastern New Mexico, riding roughshod over everybody and robbing and stealing and killing people. So this was, and I can't remember his last name right now. I just wrote an article about this in Smithsonian Magazine because Sister Blandina is on track for sainthood. And so I have the names that the article will come out in October, and I'll have all the names right for that. But this is a different William, Billy the Kid, gangster who Sister Blandina met and helped her save Abraham's life. So,
where was Sister Blandina from originally?
Well, she was Italian.
Italian.
Okay. Yeah, and she was born in near Genoa, so sort of northern Italy, and but she came up to Cincinnati when she was 4, and then became a nun, I think at the age of 16 or 17, and then was sent off to. She was born, I think, in 18. Oh, I can't remember. But anyhow, so she was like 21 or 22 when she was set off alone on the Santa Fe Trail, riding a stagecoach, terrified of cowboys. Everybody told her to watch out for cowboys, so she was petrified. And then landed in Trinidad and sort of got her bearings and became really a real moral force in Trinidad, and helped. She was helped the poor immigrants. She was quite foresighted. She sort of spoke up for a lot of the Hispanic and Indian population was being pushed off their land by all these new arrivals from the East, these Anglos, and she really stood up for them and spoke up for them years before anybody else was even thinking about that stuff. So she's now she's made it past the first 2 stages of sainthood, and I think she has to perform some miracles now, and then she'll be on her way.
Well, she's already done the Billy the Kid one, so
yeah. Well, I've learned a lot, in researching this article. You actually, once you are, she's not beatified yet. She is venerated, and once that happens, then the miracles have to happen after the petition from sainthood is submitted. So the petition was submitted in June of 2014. So they have to prove that these miracles have happened. And they have like panels of medical experts. Most of them are medical. They have to prove it happened after June of 2014. So Billy the Kid doesn't count. She also, at some point in Santa, her hospital was on fire, and she somehow got up on the roof, and nobody knew how she had gotten there, and so that could potentially qualify as a miracle, except that it happened before June 2014.
Yeah, she's a fascinating lady. William Leroy, sorry.
Leroy. Yep.
William Leroy. With the Billy the Kid, the non-William Bowney one. There are some wonderful pictures of this nun on the internet. Just, if you Google the fastest nun in the West, Sister Belinda Segali.
Blandina.
Blandina Segali.
And there was actually, that name came from a television show. She was on a television show her character. They did I forget the show, in the 60s, so they called her the fastest nun in the West. And she saved one of the things that her heroic virtues, as they call it, in the researching her potential sainthood, they have to prove her heroic virtues, and one of them was saving a man in Trinidad from a lynch mob. So that's what the TV show's about.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So who knows? That the picture I'm looking at might be from the TV show as opposed to one of the original photographs ever.
Probably not. There's one she sort of looks very severe in a nun outfit.
Yeah. The other one is similar to that habit, but she's got her mouth open like she's speaking.
Yeah, when she's looking sideways. That's her. Yeah. That's the real deal.
Which is, and this is uncanny because, and we talked about this, she looks a lot like you. And that's, so I'm thinking, hold on, you don't, in your DNA check, it was French, right? It wasn't Italian.
Italian, you never know.
You never know.
Well, they say Julia looks like me too. I think, brown haired.
Well, yeah.
Old-timey photos, who knows?
Yeah, you don't look, but the thing with Sister Blandina, her photos look like they're somebody just dressed somebody from the 20th century up or the 21st century up in an old outfit and did one of those kind of antique photo things at the photo booth at the fair. She's got a very modern look to her. Her eyes are very just bright and almost a smile, which is not what a lot of them had back in the day when you took pictures of them. And then, of course, there are pictures of her when she's like in her 80s. She's very, very interesting lady. Obviously, a very, very full life and connected to your family. Was she looking after Julia Staab right up to her death?
No, just for those few weeks. And she sent Julia off to Europe. So one of the things, you had mentioned that Julia being in this unfamiliar environment would sort of sequester herself in her home in the familiar environment. But Julia actually went back to Germany a lot, which is not something you sort of hear about with these immigrant stories that, typically they come to America and they never see their family again. They never go back. But Julia went back all the time. And I later learned that maybe part of the reason for her depression at this 1877 was it was right when her father died. So when she went back to Europe, she was going back after her father's death. So she went there a few times. Her sons went to school, and daughters were educated there for some portion of their lives. So I think in this sort of period when you don't hear much about her, I think there's times when she's in Germany as well. And so Sister Blandina accompanied her to Trinidad. Julia went on, took the train to New York and then a boat to Germany. And Sister Blandina went back to her convent and to tending to the poor and the sick.
Oh. Well, that's
she stayed in Santa Fe. So it was just a brief intersection of these two lives. So she stayed in Santa Fe till around the turn of the century and then went back to Cincinnati and continued her ministry there.
Oh, that's very cool. And it's unfortunate that some of the articles actually have her connected to the other Billy the Kid as opposed to.
It took me a while to figure it out. I mean, she writes, it's in her memoir. She wrote a book, which is a wonderful book if anybody's interested in sort of historical memoirs, called At the End of the Santa Fe Trail. And it's letters to her sister, Justina, who is also a nun in the same order. And she calls him Billy the Kid. So when I read it, I just thought, oh, that's Billy the Kid. And then I don't know, at some point, much farther, I'd already sort of written up the chapter and I had it as William Bonney. And then at some point I was like, I was reading, because I also wrote a section about Abraham was involved, he was a businessman and he was involved in sort of some nefarious political and business stuff in New Mexico. And he the Lincoln County War, which is what Billy the Kid was involved in. He was involved with, sort of sided with the bad guys, and that they were merchants who were affiliated with his business. And so I was reading about that, and I thought, well, how could Billy the Kid be in Lincoln County at this point when he's supposed to be in Trinidad? And so I sort of looked at timelines, and in the time when Sister Blandina was writing about Billy the Kid being in Trinidad, he was in Arizona and in western New Mexico. So I finally got online and realized that it was a different Billy the Kid. And so fortunately I caught that, because I'm sure that otherwise there'd be lots of Billy the Kid aficionados letting me know that how wrong I was.
Oh, they come out of the woodwork on you.
Yeah.
But that's a good journalist to dig around that and figure that out, because that's one of those things that'll put you off on a different direction completely when you're doing some research, and you'll be off on a tangent because it's almost like, oh, look at Sparkles. Let's go that way. Everything's going to, he's famous. I'm going to go on that tangent. But to dig down into it and actually go to the timeline, that's a good thing, as a policeman would say. It's when I do my investigations. There, again, the book is American Ghost, and it's a family's haunted past in the desert Southwest. You can get that. Actually, can you get it from your website? Let's see. Yes, I'm pretty sure you could.
You can. It links you to. Yeah. You can. I sell signed copies on my website. If you just want a normal one, you can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or your local bookstore. I always welcome people going to their local bookstore if it's still there. And you can get it stored anywhere.
Oh, it's perfect. Again, this is all it's a tale of a immigrant family in the U.S., all 300 years worth of family history centered around what became a famous person, which was Julia Staab, who still hung around where she was. And it happens. It happens in a lot of places, and it's. I'm really glad that you put the book together. I see another book here, and this is an interesting book for some of my listeners, and it's a Beekeeper's Lament, and this is a nonfiction book. And it's about the bees, and it's the loss of the die-off of bees in rural America. And I mean this, Hannah, it's interesting to my listener, because some of my only listener, they get a little bit carried away in kind of the conspiracy of it. Did you run into anybody after you wrote that book writing you letters saying, it's part of the government conspiracy to protect the people who have the modified crops and the GMOs because they're covering up the use of neonicotinoid
pesticides? Yeah.
Did you get into that at all?
Not so much. I mean, I write about the pesticides to some degree, but I write more. It's more, the book is really more sort of about this one beekeeper's struggles and it's sort of a history of modern industrial beekeeping, sort of beekeeping in the context of modern agriculture. So it's not really, although it talks about why bees are dying, it's not really like specifically what's causing colony collapse disorder, which was this big die-off in 2006, 2007, 2008, where people started blaming the pesticides. And I, honestly, 10 years later, I still don't know what caused colony collapse disorder. It's not happening anymore, but the bees are still dying for a variety of reasons. So I haven't gotten, there's not that, there are a few people who, less of the book, but subsequent articles that I've written where I've been more overt and saying, I don't think, if you banned all these pesticides, the bees are still going to be dying. And a few people got mad at me about that, or just generally feel like I'm somehow defending modern agriculture and big beekeepers. The guy, John Miller, who my book is about, at the time he had 10,000 hives. Now he has 12,000 colonies of bees and hauls them all over the western United States to pollinating crops. That's how he makes his money. Then he brings them up to North Dakota in the summertime and makes honey. But really, his big payday is February in the almonds in the Central Valley of California, when there's 1 million acres that bloom at the same time, and they need to be pollinated by bees. So farmers, almonds are big money, and almond farmers pay beekeepers big money to bring their bees in and pollinate the almonds. And a lot of sort of what's wrong with modern bees probably comes back to this time they spend in the almonds swapping diseases, and just, it's really hard on their bees. So the book is looking at the bigger picture of that, and not just the conspiracies of whether it's cell phones or neonicotinoid pesticides or, all those things. It's a larger look at the sort of larger system of agriculture and bees' role in it.
Yeah, I think it'd be a very, very good read, and I'm against bees using cell phones. They just fly into everything, and it can be a real problem. I don't know about what it's like where you are, but up here, bees and cell phones, they're just causing all sorts of issues. And that's called The Beekeeper's Lament, how 1 man and 500 million honeybees helped feed America. And again, I think that would be a good read. I'm actually going to get that one because I'm interested in that. And it's not from a conspiratorial background or a conspiracy thing. I just like reading about bees in agriculture. We have a lot of bees in this area. There was a few that had to die off back, 15 years ago or so, but we're not seeing that here anymore. And we don't have almonds. We just we don't have a lot of the beekeepers like the I was going to say transient beekeepers.
The big guys, the migratory.
The ones that would shop around. These are just they show up near a farm and say, "Hey, do you mind if I put some hives on your property?" And the farmers go for it. Because we have blueberries, huge blueberry crops out here, and cranberries. All the fruits, ground fruit like strawberries and things like that. So the farmers love it. And my in-laws have they have a cattle farm, but they grow their own feed. And the bees are all around the river because of the clover and whatever grows along the river. And they love it because they get, 30, 40 gallons of honey every year we get to tap into.
So it's blueberry honey.
Oh, that's so good. That would be, blueberry honey is great. And because we use it for, instead of sugar in coffee and tea and things like that and cooking. So very, very good. Again, that's The Beekeeper's Lament by Hannah Nordhaus. Mein Freundin, Frau Hannhaus. I'm going to keep practicing that. And someday, if I ever meet a Mrs. Nordhaus again, I can get to use it. Nordhausen. American Ghost is a fascinating study of a family coming out to the U.S. and about the kind of centering around the lovely ancestor who we're hoping has been moved on. We're just going to have to test that out, I think, Hannah.
Yeah, well, I think everybody should go down to La Posada. It's a great place to visit. It's right by the Santa Fe Plaza, and you can go ghost hunting while you're there.
Well, I think it's a big, great area. I think they had the Spanish have been occupying that area since the 1600s, sharing it probably with the First Nations or the American Indian, and the American Indian, of course, being there for weeks before that. So the land itself is going to be just right with spirit activity, and centering around and Santa Fe. I mean, I would think of that location as being a high energy location just to start with. That kind of crossroads of lots of young people, young families out in a new world to make it and to get along, and that energy coming into anywhere is just going to buzz.
Yeah, it's got a lot. I mean, it's got, first of all, just a wonderful energy and light to it, but it's got such history, of all these cultures sort of clashing and living together and washing over each other, and it's really a remarkable place. And the Taos Pueblo, Taos is about an hour and a half from Santa Fe. The Pueblo there, it's the oldest continuously inhabited structure in North America, so it's really got a lot of history there. It's old adobe structure. Still don't have any electricity. Still, it's pretty amazing there.
When you were doing the little bit of a background, Ben Schuster, was that who was that? That was that Abraham's brother?
Julia's brother.
Julia's brother.
Yeah,
okay,
Julia Schuster was her name.
Schuster.
And one thing I did want to say is, when as part of my research, I did a ghost tour of Santa Fe as well. And as you mentioned, and as you would imagine, there's lots of, it's got so much history. So there's lots of old buildings and lots of great stories there. And it was a really fun tour. So that's worth doing as well.
Julia, or Judith the Dowser.
Yes.
You mentioned that. Who was Judith the Dowser?
One of the people I saw, I live up in Boulder, and a friend of mine had decided his house was full of ghosts, and he had to do something about it. He woke up in the middle of the night and felt someone sitting on his chest. And so another friend of his recommended this woman, Judith, who's a dowser. So she has a divining rod, which is, I guess there's two kinds. There's one that's like the Y-shaped divining rod that people use to find water. This one was an L-shaped. I think it was a copper rod. And she would spin it, and she had a sort of mediating spirit she talked to, an archangel. And she would ask him questions, and if it spun right, it was yes, and left no, or vice versa. And so she went to my friend Liam's house and said she found, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, like the ghosts of 12 miners and 4 Native Americans and a couple of celestial vortexes and a few demons, and helped get rid of them all. And he thought it had worked. So he suggested I meet with her to talk to her about Julia. So it seemed like this was a modality I hadn't tried. So I went to meet with her, and she had actually, she called me back after I called her, and she said, well, I've actually stayed in your great-great-grandmother's room. She's a big fan of Santa Fe. Her whole house was decorated with sort of Santa Fe kind of stuff. And she had been down there and had stayed in the room. It was before she had become a dowser, and it was the last room available. And so she, felt that there was someone who did not want her in the room, and they checked out. She never really thought about it again. And then she found out through me that this was Julia Staab. And so she was very interested in it. And she's actually been back down to Santa Fe a few times too. But we met at her house in outside of Boulder, where I live. And she used her divining rod and asked a bunch of questions and answered a bunch of the questions I had. And then towards the end of the session, she also tried to set Julia free and send her home.
Oh, that's very cool. We were talking to Hannah Nordhaus, and she's an author and a poet. And actually, I want to come back and ask you a little bit about your poetry. She's the author of American Ghost, A Family's Haunted Past in the Desert Southwest, as well as The Beekeeper's Lament, How One Man and half a billion honeybees help feed America. I wouldn't be wanting to be the guy who has to count those, but where was
it's a ballpark figure.
Okay, we'll keep it as a ballpark figure. We'll be back with more from Hannah right after this. Okay, this part.
Just so you know, I am not a poet.
You're not?
No.
Hold on. Where did I see this poetry stuff?
My mom's a poet. You might have seen.
Oh,
yeah.
Tell her to keep her stuff off your website. No, I somehow connected to poetry here. That's what it was. Yes, I went to articles, and I think I got poetry out of there somewhere. No, I didn't get it from there. I got it somehow.
Well, there's something about mother-daughter. I do have something in my blog about my mom wrote a poem about this episode that I wrote about in my book.
Oh, okay. That's probably where I bumped into it. Oh, Jim. Okay, let's go. Let's get her done so you can get back to your life before the kids get home.
All right.
Tear it apart.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to come back with the fourth quarter with Hannah in 3, 2, 1. Thank you, Dave, and welcome back, everybody, with Hannah Nordhaus. And I mistakenly said she was a poet, but it's actually her mother. Sorry about that. One of the things I needed to ask you about is, through your experience with mediums, did you ever actually go to them and say, I've had some experience, I'm researching this book, And I was just curious if I could sit down with you and say, hey, is there somebody who wants to come forward and talk to me about my life? Like actually get a real reading for yourself personally.
Well, that happened to some degree. So the guy I mentioned.
Thank you, Dave, and welcome back, everybody. Spaced Out Weekend. We are with the author Hannah Nordhaus, and I mistakenly said she was a poet, but that was her mom. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Hannah, is your experience with a lot of these psychics. Have you ever had the opportunity to sit down and actually get a reading for yourself?
Well, not really, sort of, a little bit. When I went to down to Cassadaga, Florida, and met with the psychic there, he, as I mentioned before, he was the only one I gave zero information about Julia and what I was looking for. So he instead did a reading of me, but because I didn't really have any questions for him, it wasn't very useful. I'm trying to think if he told me I was going to become a physician's assistant and that I was going to get married, which I'd already been married for 10 years at that point. So I didn't put much stock in that.
So he got that right.
Yeah.
You did
I did, in fact, get married. He said my book wasn't going to do very well. That's the only part I really didn't want to hear. And then, there was one woman, Eileen, she was the one I met in Boulder. And when I did meet with her, she wanted to do a little bit of a reading of me before she went on to Julia. And she said my aura was yellow. I'm not sure what that means. But, she didn't get very deep into it. And honestly, I sort of feel like I don't really, it's not something I want or have looked for. I don't really want to know what's going to happen to me in my life. And I don't want to, have some, true or not, someone tells me this is going to happen and I start thinking it's going to, I sort of don't want foregone conclusions to get into my brain like little earworms. So I'm perfectly happy talking to dead relatives rather than trying to find out more about my own future.
Yeah, that's what I do. I don't. I'll ask, how a challenge might turn out. Just kind of get a heads up, but not. So, am I going to get married to somebody who's got blue eyes and green hair or something? I don't know. Yellow means it pertains to the spleen and life energy. So how's your spleen? It's
maybe I need to have it checked out. Or no, maybe it's good.
It's good. It's the color of awakening, optimism, easygoing nature, and inspiration and intelligence. So guess what? I would not be anywhere near yellow. I would be down more beige or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds fine to me. I'm glad I have a yellow aura.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and it's got to be true because I just looked it up on the internet. So it's I've been to a psychic. I never wanted to go. I never had I shouldn't say I wanted to go. I'd never had a desire to go until I bumped into somebody in 2012, and the psychic knew my mom's name was Lexa. Like,
wow!
Pull that out of a hat. She goes, "Well, your mom's here, and her name's Lexa. Well, her name's Lena, Lessa, Lexa," and she had this look in her face, and I went, "That's it. How the heck did you do that?" And I have a show actually every second Sunday. It's called Two Mediums and a Large here. And the medium Joanna that I contacted first was on October 6th. Then I phoned her up and talked to her about coming on. And she said, "Oh, by the way, your dad's here." And then described my dad. And she said, "He's holding a cake." And I was like, "Oh, really?" Yeah, this is my sign for somebody who either has a birthday or has had a birthday or an anniversary. Does this mean anything to you? And I said, yeah, was my daughter's 16th birthday on October 5th, yesterday. And she goes, and she's so matter-of-factly, "Oh yeah, he's just here to wish her a happy birthday," and then moved on. I was, what the? Okay, you're on. You're coming on the show now. And she has callers from all over, up and down North America, all across North America, calling in every second Sunday. Just a fascinating person. But I have been to those who kind of stare at you and you almost look at them like, "So do you want me to give you information? Is that what you're looking at me like that for?" And that whole cold reading thing where it's kind of iffy that, you're not making this stuff up or just generalizing.
Yeah.
And that's,
you hear these stories. I mean, you hear stories like what you just said, where I have friends who've been to people who say, your mother, just stuff that you haven't fed them and there's no way they could have known. And I haven't had that experience. I will also say that I haven't lost, my parents yet. And so I haven't lost anybody who I really, it'd be nice to speak to my grandparents. I love my grandparents, but I didn't so I think it might be really different. Maybe down the line when these things have happened to me, it'll be more appealing as well. And I can see what the appeal is. When I went to Casadega with my mother-in-law, I went with my in-laws live in Florida, so I went there with her, and she also got a reading at the same time, and she had just lost a brother, and she had another brother who was about to die. So it was a much, mine was sort of this dry academic pursuit in some ways, but for her it was really personal and meaningful. And, I could certainly see it down the line having a lot more appeal to me.
Oh yeah, and the academic pursuit. I speak to people all the time. I interviewed people this weekend. One, a psychologist, Dr. Roy Hill, and I've got another doctor of biology coming up, Max Steinberg. And when they look at these things, they look at them from, and Roy Hill was looking at out of body or near death experiences where you pass and then you kind of are raised above what you perceive as your body, or you're communicating with past relatives who tell you it's not your time, go back. And or having a lot of experience, like going up to various levels of quote unquote heaven and dealing with angelic beings, and then they're telling you to go back. So he's looked at that that near death experience from a doctor side, he's analyzed them, and just an amazing way to look at it. And you coming from an academic background of well, it's not really in journalism. It's there are some gray areas, but it's basically black and white. It's sitting somebody down and tell me the story, and now let me go out and do some background on it to see if you're full of baloney or not. But
what you see, what you hear, what you can prove, and this world of mediums and the paranormal is the opposite. So it's definitely not a place where I was comfortable.
Yeah, and it's changing. And over the last few years, it has changed to the point where you can. We have equipment now, especially with the paranormal, where you can set something up and, it's in a Faraday cage or someplace where you can't get radio waves into it, and we're getting voices. We've got devices that will scan AM radio waves backwards at an extremely high rate of speed in a Faraday box where they can't pick up a radio broadcast, and you're getting full sentences forward. Well, you can't have random words out of a radio broadcast in multiple stations backwards that would put an entire sentence together that answered one of your questions. So now you kind of go, okay, what are other ways that could have happened? It's spooky.
So here's the thing, and this is something, both in the pursuit of history and in the pursuit of ghosts, that I find, that I sort of concluded in writing this book and researching it, is that regardless of, what technology you have, what scientific method you use to isolate these voices or to try to prove something that is hard to prove, when it comes to something like ghosts or politics or history or what we want to believe, they're either going to believe you or they're not, and it doesn't really matter what kind of evidence you have. And that's, and I said that's where I came around about Julia's ghosts and about ghost stories in general, is that it doesn't matter what I saw or what these psychic mediums are telling me. You're either going to believe or you're not. And we sort of we build our lives around these stories that we tell ourselves, and nothing's going to change our minds really. And so, and that's true about history as well. And, I had all these family stories like the Archbishop, and whether my great-great-grandfather Abraham helped build the cathedral. And we've been telling ourselves these stories our whole lives, and nobody's going to debunk them for us, whether or not they're true. A lot of this sort of family stories I thought were gospel were in fact myth. So that's where, I just find the ghost hunt. I really ended up feeling like hunting ancestors and hunting ghosts is really part and parcel of the same search, but it's, people just aren't people are going to read into your stories what they want to read into them.
Yeah, and in this genre, you're getting a lot of people looking at it from different angles. You're going to get in your case, you've got a study on an American immigrant family that goes back 300 years, and you're going to get that group of people wanting to look at it because it's a good nonfiction book, and then you've got the little bit of the paranormal in there because it's all part of the same package. And actually, in my case, I look at it and go, oh, that's a little bit spicy now. We got this going on, and you've got all the interaction. You've got photos of these people because it wasn't that long ago, really, if you think about it in the great scheme of things. The sister died in 1941, so she's been around from 1850 to 1941. She had a long life. And so that, connecting with even your ancestors, you've got Julia and Abraham. There are photos of them. There are photos of their house. Their house is still there. It's very tactile. You can see it if you want. You can go touch it. This exists, and it connects the reader or the experiencer who goes down to that hotel now. It connects them with the story of your family and the history of your family and the interactions in Santa Fe. That's what makes it palpable for me to enjoy that type of book.
Yeah, so I mean that was when people always ask me, what do you want readers to take away from the book? And that is really, in the end, it's exactly what you just said. Like, the past is so close, you can almost touch it. And whether it's through paranormal hunting or through what I did, this sort of combing through historical records, genealogy, newspapers, family oral histories, and all the histories I read from the period, it's just, I felt like, when I go down to Santa Fe now, I feel like I'm have one foot in the present and one foot in my family's past. And it just, for me, that was such a gift to be able to learn so much about the history, where I came from and where my family came from. And I guess I hope that readers will also, in whatever way we try to connect to the past, whether it's through history, through reading nonfiction books, or through ghost hunting, just trying to understand our own connection to the past and how close it is to us.
Yeah, and let's not forget where we came from, and that way we also honor our ancestors too. And
yes,
forgetting where you've come from, and actually forgetting the names of the people who came before you in a bloodline is a disservice to who you are. It's always nice to remember those who came before us in our family and the work they did to get you to where you are.
Yeah,
which is very cool.
Yeah, it's sort of ghost hunting.
Yeah.
It's a very personal level. It's trying to revive, bring back the dead.
My uncle did a search of his, it'll be my mother's side of the family, and he went back to Scotland and he found a couple of relatives that got hung for sheep stealing, and he slowed down his search at that point. And well, that's where it gets good. Like, keep going. Somebody got hung. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, I did have some relatives when I was writing. There's a few relatives who I think were less happy with the unseemly stuff I uncovered about the family. And I, like you, I'm a storyteller, right? I love to unearth histories, and it's far enough away from me and in both in era and sort of sensibility that I think it's pretty cool that my great-great-grandfather might have murdered my great-great-grandmother, like they say in the ghost stories, or that he was this sort of mean 19th century patriarch, and that he was involved in unseemly business dealings and may have stolen an election. And, I think that's great, but some members of my family are less pleased with that kind of dirty laundry getting aired.
Dirty laundry is one thing. And, we talk about myth and the oral tradition or oral history. Well, that's where our oral history gets completely knocked sideways when we leave the facts out and you color something completely different than it really was. we all want to look back in our families and say, oh, we were just the most perfect group in the world. But honestly, 1800s, I think everybody had some shady connections.
It's a lot of closets and a lot of skeletons.
Oh, yeah. And
yeah.
I live in a house that was built in the mid-1940s. I tell you, there aren't a lot of closets. It was all armoires back then. But I know what you mean. It is something. If you don't include that, you're not doing your family service. No, and that's the fun. I mean, that's what sells books. That's the fun part of history, is finding the story. It's not all about triumph and goodness. It's hard work, and you're going to have to bend some rules. And again, it's Santa Fe in the mid 1800s. Good Lord. Or the late 1800s, you are going to associate with people if you in the bar or in social activities, and if they were social, you're going to be bending an elbow with somebody who's a rancher who's had some nefarious background, or he wouldn't own the ranch. Yeah, and that is your peer group. It was a time of lots of transition in New Mexico, in the country, and a lot of times the laws didn't quite keep up with the sort of the environment, and there was a lot of things that were a lot of gray areas of morality and legality. And we're 2016, and in my country the laws don't keep up with the technology and what's going on. So no, it's a little bit odd. And heck, you had the Civil War right in that whole time. It's we have law, but depends who's occupying the town at any given time. Yeah, one of the very fun things that I sort of uncovered was just reading about all that sort of unseemly political dealings. I mean, it was such a in American politics, we think our politics are so ugly right now, but man, was it ugly back then. I mean, every election was stolen, and there was all these write-in, people throwing out ballots, and it was, if we think it's ugly now, it was even uglier then. And my family is right in the middle of it. They were, Abraham was a county commissioner, and there was a couple of contested elections. And at one point he tried to buy off the legislature to do some militia warrants that he was trying to cash in these militia warrants for money. And he, ran off with my great grandmother. He took her to California to sort of get out of town while the heat was really bad. And so it was, they were in the thick of it. It makes me think that our elections in America, anyway, are not so bad as they seem right now. What's a militia warrant? God, it's so complicated. I could barely understand it. So I can tell you quickly. So during the Civil War and the Indian War, I think it was during the Indian Wars, the territorial legislature issued militia warrants where they said, we can't pay you right now, but once this is all over, we'll pay you for serving in militias, fighting Indians, I believe. And then once it was all over, they didn't pay anybody. Abraham bought them all up on pennies to the dollar, and then tried to get the territorial legislature to pay up for the warrants on dollars to the dollar. And a lot of them were fraudulent, and it wasn't clear that they, who had issued them. But he would have made a lot of money if he had convinced the legislature to pay him for those warrants. And it was like, so something, a sort of obsession of his over the years that when I went to the Santa Fe archives to try to find what was in the Staab file, and it was a very slim file. It had a citizenship declaration and some militia warrants. So he spent a lot of his time, energy, and political capital trying to cash these things in, and never succeeded. Oh, okay. Now I got you. And then tried to buy a lot of people off in the process. Well, of course, you need to do that. Yeah. That's how you get people to vote your way. Yeah, still goes on, I'm pretty sure. Okay, not as bad as it did back then. A little less of a paper trail back then. You look at third world countries, and we go over to monitor their elections, and you kind of think, oh, how could a country like this have such terrible, terrible elections? Well, they're exactly where we were 200 years ago. So in 200 years, their elections are going to be a little bit better if they still exist. But for now, we got to monitor their elections. And unfortunately, well, I guess it's all part of growing up. And it's like it's what was supposed to happen, I guess, to get from point A to point B in any country. And it's like when we talk to people about psychic mediums, it's you can go to a psychic medium or you don't. And it's I believe those people who don't go is because really there's nothing for them to learn, or you don't have to because there's no fancy message coming in. It's like for me, it was a fluke of circumstances that got me to a psychic medium who then expressed, this is how these 3 challenges are going to turn out, which completely changed my mental being because I was under a lot of stress. I had post-traumatic stress from work. And once I got the idea of what these 3 things are going to turn out this way on your behalf, the stress was gone because I retained a little bit of control over what was going on. That was just a time in my life when I needed that information. And it came to the point where it was, your mother's name is Lexa. Well, that's a nail between the head with a hammer. You're going, oh, okay, wow, that's cool. So now everything comes out of your mouth is I'm going to listen to. But if, I went through, decades without ever even thinking about a psychic. So I guess when it's your time, or it's not your time because no one really has to hit you over the head and say, smarten up. And it's like somebody having your cards read. And I can read cards now, which is amazing. But people say, well, do you want to read cards for me? And I'd look at them saying, you don't really need your cards read because you don't really have anything going on in your life. And our histories are like that, I believe. Our families did things in the past to get us to the point we're at now. And we do things to get our children to the point. We teach them certain ways and they're exposed to certain things so they can learn. It's just all a part of our lives growing up. And you, young lady, out writing books and not being a poet.
I try to avoid it.
Yeah.
That's what I need at this point in my life. I did write poetry in high school. I think it was pretty bad.
Yeah, I did that too.
I think we all did.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things, okay, we're going to learn poetry. Oh, I can do this. And then the girls would go, oh, that's beautiful. And you go, oh, I'll keep writing it then. Let me make some more stuff up.
Well, my mom is she's a beautiful poet. She's great.
Oh, is she published too?
Jean Nordhaus, yes.
Jean Nordhaus.
So look her up.
What are you doing right now?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was leaning over.
Oh, no, it sounded like you were cleaning out the hamster's cage.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. If you've got a hamster's cage, it has to be cleaned out. You're such a mom. What are you doing?
Multitasking, sorry.
See, and that's just, it's one of those things as a mom. You get to do that.
Yeah.
And you're darn good at it. So, and I really like to thank you for coming on, Hannah. I know this has been longer than you anticipated. And it's Hannah Nordhaus. She is the author of American Ghost, A Family's Haunted Past in the Desert Southwest. She's also the author of The Beekeeper's Lament, how 1 man and 500 million honeybees help feed America. I would suggest both of those because I know I am going to grab both of them because I'm interested in the bee issues and a bit of a sociological study on a beekeeper and his issues with the die-off of bees and his life as a migrant. What do you call it? A migrant bee person?
Migratory beekeeper.
Migratory beekeeper. That's interesting because I haven't heard about those. So I'm going to definitely look into The Beekeeper's Lament and, of course, American Ghost because ghosts are my life and eventually will be my death. So again, thank you, Hannah Nordhaus, for dropping by.
You are welcome, and it was lovely talking with you.
Okay, and you take care. I'm going to be giving away a couple of your books so to our listeners too. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. That was fun.
And for everybody else out there, remember, please keep an open mind.
This is our last goodbye. Young hearts will stop. Torn souls set free. All that we have is now. If this is what you want, then come to me.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
the snow. What are those voices? They sing as they go. What are those voices? Look up for the mountains. Here come the mountains. Because somebody hide, somebody better hide. And through the hail, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. We are after you, dead or alive. We are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget yourself. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after now. Run through the hail like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done. Throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after. No!
I see dead people. I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Dave's not here!
In 20 years, what will we say? When we look back on yesterday.